Hi, this is James with the Nellis Group. There is a question we've been getting consistently over the last at least 2 to 3 years, which is, what's the market doing? Where is it? What do we see happening next? I think to truly understand where the market is and where it's going is we have to go back in time, back into the history. Thankfully, as the Nellis Group, we've lived it. We've been here since the early 80s. We've seen the different cycles in the market. And if someone hasn't told you this yet, every real estate market is cyclical. So the question is, how long is the cycle? Nationwide, they say that it's a 7-year cycle. Here locally, we say and share that it's really a 10-year cycle. We're going to show you what that looks like. So in the early 80s, we started to see the market go up, and then it reached its peak right at 89. And in 1989, there was what we called a crisis, and the crisis was a savings and loans crisis that came about. Well, here's what's interesting is when that happened in 89, we started to see the market drift further and further down. As a matter of fact, it took so long for it to rebound that we personally knew agents that had their own properties that started selling here and here because they were worried what? That it may never get back to 89. Well, what's interesting is in 99, we got back to where home prices were the same as in 89. Well, what does that mean? Well, in 99, we started to see a couple other things happen. And one of the things we saw was the tech boom. If you remember that, we started to see property increases. We saw multiple offers. As a matter of fact, once we started going up and we got into 2004 and 2005, we saw some of the greatest appreciation that we've seen in 1 year. As a matter of fact, in Metro DC, we saw 19% in 2004 and 21% in 2005. And we saw this correction. And this correction lasted for a longer period of time than most would like to admit. Here in Metro DC, August of 2005 is when it started, this stop period. For most markets, they would say 2006, they started to see it go down. Well, here's what's interesting. Depending on the metro area and depending on where you are in DC, for instance, in 2012 to 2013, DC itself, DC proper, we're back to these prices in 2005. Most markets took until 2015 to make it back to these prices. Here's an interesting thing. We just sold last year in 2016, we sold a home that was bought in 2006 in Loudoun County, actually in Ashburn. It was bought for $660,000. And just last year, we sold it for $610,000 after improvements. Well, what does that mean? That means that even in Loudoun County, one of the highest median income areas in our area, still had not rebounded back to 2006 pricing. Well, what have we seen? Because if we're looking at the predictions, that would mean in 2015, it should drop down and then we should see this again, right? Well, here's what's interesting. We're now in 2017 and we haven't seen a big change. Well, there's a couple things that happen with that. The housing economy is huge for the entire economy. As a matter of fact, if the rest of the economy is not doing well, the government has to feed money into the housing economy so that everything else can still churn. Well, there's one simple thing that they've been doing. Really, since we saw this correction, they've been trying to do it to feed it back up, and that's interest rates. Interest rates and sales prices are an inverse relationship. So the lower they can keep the interest rates, the higher they can keep the sales prices, right? We call it the 1%, 10% rule here at the Nellis Group when we're helping buyers and even sellers understand the process. It's actually part of why we're starting to see a sluggishness in the market, especially in the upper end. We're seeing less buyers, we're seeing different things. That will become even more apparent if rates continue to go up. So where are we? What are the kind of different rules of thumb? Well, some people are saying at any moment, we're going to see 2017, 2018, we're going to see the correction, and it's going to come downward. There's one other thought which is interesting, and the other thought is a 2020 thought to 2025. Well, what does that mean? Well, in 2020, it's believed that the millennials, the people living in the basements, probably your basement, at that point, they'll enter the market. Well, here's the problem. When they were going through college and seeing everything, they saw this huge correction, which is also why they've stayed out of the market for so long and stayed renting. Well, they've seen this trajectory of growth. They've seen, well, hey, a lot of the markets are back to where they were, so now there's a feel good about it. One belief is that if the market holds in 2017 and carries all the way to this date, 2020, that at 2020, that's when most of the millennials will actually start parking their money into real estate. They'll start buying it themselves. If that happens, and we don't see a correction between now and 2020, it's believed that we'll continue to see good trajectory and good sales prices all the way to 2025, and in 2025, we'll see that next correction. Here's what we do know. We do know a couple things. One is we know that we're due. We should have already seen a correction. It hasn't happened. So the question becomes, will it correct in 2017? Will it correct in 2018? Where will it be? Now, at this point, we're very depressing, right? At this point, if you're a seller, if you're a buyer, what do you do? Well, if you're a buyer, you just heard us talk about that 1%, 10% rule. If you know that you would hold the property for more than 5, even 10 years, it makes sense to purchase right now because of the home affordability index. As long as these rates are low, you can afford more home, probably a larger home than you would have before. If you're a seller and you know that you'd want to sell within the next 2 to 3 years, well, it's kind of that crystal ball. You have to weigh it, right? I know what I'm going to get today. If the market corrects, I'm certainly not going to get that tomorrow. Or you could hope and say, hey, maybe it's going to hold all the way through 2020 as predicted. Long story short, you have to just, as a seller, know, okay, here's my bird in hand, here's what I have. If I'm an upper end listing, and if I have a property that's worth over $3 million, I may take a hard look at these interest rates. Yes, there's cash buyers for that, but a lot of people that are prudent with their financing will actually leverage money for that. So they're going to get a loan, and it will impact the jumbo money that's out there. Okay? And the buyers, we make it really simple. If they're going to buy and only hold for 2 years, we tell them don't buy. You win in real estate when you choose when you buy and when you sell. So if you can get in at a low interest rate and hold the property, and if the numbers aren't where you want them to be in whatever year you choose to sell, and you can rent and cover your payment, then the nice thing is you have complete flexibility to go do something else as well. You only lose in real estate when you're forced to do something that's not good compared to where the market is today. By the way, as far as vacancy rates, when it comes to rentals, DC is one of the best. Now here's the interesting thing. When sales prices go down, guess what? Rental rates actually go up. So it's an interesting dynamic when you see the sales price go down, because now what happens? Normally the interest rate has gone up, sales prices are coming down, so now there's more available renters, and actually good renters with good credit that can't afford the homes that they would have bought, say, the year before. So where does that mean, and where are we at in the market? Remember, we're typically a 10-year cycle. So what that means is in 2015 is when we should have seen the correction. We haven't seen the correction. We're now in 2017. As a matter of fact, most of the investors that I know moved a lot of their property to become solvent in cash because they're looking for this 2018, 2019 cycle to come back and buy property again. So we really focus on the long-term hold at the Nellis Group. We love it when our clients buy property, hold on to it, rent it out, make the next step. All we want you to be is the informed consumer. So if you're interested in what the market looks like, if you want us to compare not just the macro market, but the micro market and be hyper-local to where you live or to where you want to buy, because as we already shared, all markets aren't the same, give us a call today. We're the Nellis Group. We'd love to sit down with you, sit down with one of our real estate experts, and share with you what's happening in your community at this time, right now, in this market. Look forward to talking to you soon.